Hello, it's IELTS Writing tutorial, and in this lesson, I will explain you how to deal with bar charts in IELTS Writing Task 1. So in this lesson, you will see an example of a bar chart question. In IELTS Writing, learn about 9 answer structure. Write each paragraph of the idea answer together and learn some useful vocabulary. So here's an example of writing task 1. Question with a bar chart. You have a bar chart and you have a question card with some basic information about your chart. The first thing you need to do is to read this information attentively. Let's do it together. The bar chart shows the divorce rates into European countries from 2011 to 2015. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons who are relevant. Now let's look at the bar chart. What we can see. The name of our chart is Divorce Rates in Finland and Sweden. Down the vertical axis we have the percentages, and along the horizontal axis we have the years. Also we can see it. The information is provided for 2 countries. We've got Finland in blue and Sweden in red. Set is our bar chart, and when you have familiarized yourself with the bar chart, it's time to start writing the answer, following the band 9 answer structure. And here is the band 9 also structure. For IELTS Writing Task 1, by following this also structure, you can easily get band 9 for answer. So let's study together. Your first paragraph is an introduction. In this paragraph, you should introduce your chart to the readers in 1 or 2 sentences. Then you should write an oral paragraph. In this paragraph, you should describe some general trends and features of your chart. Next, you should write about specific features of your chart in 2 or 3 separate paragraphs. And don't forget that your goal in IELTS Writing Task 1 is to describe the presented information in a very clear way, not to give your personal opinion. So don't try to conclusion in Task 1. Now you know the answer strategy. So let's start writing our band 9 answer. And our first paragraph is an introduction. The introduction is 1 or 2 sentences where you simply paraphrase the information from your question. You should mention 2 things in your introduction: what your graph shows and for what period of time. So instead of writing the bar chart shows the divorce rates into European countries from 2011 to 2015, we should write a paraphrased version of this information by using synonyms. And here is how I wrote it. The bar chart provides information about the percentages of divorces in Finland and Sweden between 2011 and 2015. You can notice that I did not change the name of the chart, and you should never change the name of your graph. To remember, table is a table, bar chart is a bar chart, and line graph is a line graph. So I kept the bar chart. Next we have the verb shows. And verbs can always be paraphrased. In our case the verb shows was replaced by provides. Information about. We could also use such synonyms as represents or illustrates. Instead of the phrase divorce rates, I use the phrase percentages of divorces. After that comes with race into European countries. Since it's always good to be specific, in your introduction, you should try to grasp some extra information from your chart. What are those 2 European countries? Do we know? In fact, we do. Those are Finland and Sweden. So we'll use this information in our introduction by writing in Finland and Sweden. Then we have as a time period. We have paraphrased from 2011 to 2015 and written between 2011 and 2015. And it's always our introduction. It is clear and specific, and it says whatever graph shows, and for a broad period of time. So when the examiner starts reading our essay, he will quickly get familiar with the bar chart. Now we move on to the second paragraph, and our second paragraph is a general overview. It is a very important paragraph, and you must provide the overview to achieve events 6 or more for your task run. In the hourly paragraph, you should briefly describe major trends on your chart. Ideally, you should describe from 2 to 4 key features. Never write numbers, percentages, or dates in the origin. Remember the Oreo paragraph should contain all the general information. So let's look at our birth chart and identify some key features. Thursday, let's look at each country separately. We've got Finland in blue. This feelings red go up or down through all the period. Does have fluctuations. It is clear that overall, finance rate goes up, but shows some fluctuations, so I'll write down these key features. Also we have Sweden in red. We can see that Sweden's red goes down throughout the period, and also shows some fluctuations. Let's write this information to our list of key features. Now let's look at 2 countries together. How does their rates compare during this time period? To answer this question, we have to look at the country's rates at the beginning and at the end of the period. We can see that initially, Finland's rate was lower than Sweden's rate. But at the end of the period, Finland's rate became higher or outstripped Sweden's rate. So let's write down this information. Now let's use the key features that we'll gather to write in our paragraph. Here is how I wrote it. Overall, Sweden experienced a downward trend, while Finland showed an upward trend. Throughout the period, both countries' divorce rates had some fluctuations. Although Finland initially had a low rate, it outraged Sweden at the end of the period. You can see that the first word I use is the word overall. Always starts over the paragraph with the word overall. This word serves as a printer in the cadence examiner. That you start writing is it over your paragraph. Next I wrote a phrase. Sweden experienced a downward trend. This is just a nice way of saying that Sweden's rate went down. And I wrote that Finland showed an upward trend. Likewise, this means that Finland's rate went up. Note how I used the Lincoln word, while to contrast the opposite trans. It is a very good technique, so keep it in mind. Then I use word both to say the 2 countries has the same feature. In our case, both countries had some fluctuations. And finally, I compare rates of Finland and Sweden. Through all the period since initially, Finland's rate was lower since Sweden's rate, but then it changed. I used Lincoln word also. Although Finland initial had a low rate, it outrates Sweden at the end of the period. And it's always a general over your paragraph. We have to provide specific details of our bar chart. Remember that you should group the specific features of your bar chart into separate paragraphs. This way your writing will be coherent. And you won't lose points for the Markan criterion, called coherence and cohesion. You can organize your specific details in many ways. The most important thing is that your organization is logical. Ideally, you should write 2 or 3 separate paragraphs. Let's look at how I group the specific details. We have 2 countries, so The simplest way of grouping our data is to describe each country strand in a separate paragraph. So in paragraph 1, we will describe the details about Sweden, and in paragraph 2, we will describe the details about Finland. When you're given specific features, you have to write numbers and percentages, and include as much details as you can. And here's how I organized the paragraph with Sweden's specific details. Sweden's divorce rate was about 45% in 2011, being higher than Finland's rate by approximately 8%. Then it rose to almost 50% in 2012. However, the figure showed a gradual decrease to about 47% in 2013 and continued to decline steadily to the end of the period, reaching around 45% in 2014 and hitting a low point of about 37% in 2015. You can see that I simply listed all the changes that sequentially happened to Sweden's divorce rate during the given time period. I started with describing Sweden's divorce rate in 2011 when I wrote, Sweden's divorce rate was about 45% in 2011. Pay attention to the vote about that I used. Look at the bar chart. We can see that Sweden's divorce rate was somewhere between 40% and 50%. But since the rate falls between the lines, we cannot see the exact number. So I picked 45% and used the word about to indicate that this number is not exact. It would be incorrect to write students' divorce rate was 45% in 2011, so do not throw away the word about. Then, I compare Sweden's rate to Finland's rate by writing Sweden's divorce rate was about 45% in 2011, being high as in Finland's rate, but approximately 8%. Again, I use the word approximately, because we don't know the exact percentage of difference. In the next sentence I described Sweden's rate in 2012. You can see from the graph that in 2012, Sweden's rate became higher. So I wrote then it rose to almost 50% in 2012. Look at how I use the word almost. The rate was very, very close to 50%, but it did not reach this number. So I wrote almost 50%. It is a very nice technique. And the last sentence in this paragraph is dedicated to Sweden's decreasing trend. At the end of the period, we can see that during the last 3 successive years, Sweden's rate had been decreasing. So I combine this information and the last sentence by writing, however, the figure child, a grade L decreased to about 47% in 2013 and continued to decline Saturday to the end of the period, reaching around 35% in 2014 and hitting a low point of about 37% in 2015. The linking word, however, is used to emphasize the student's rate changed in opposite direction, from increasing to decreasing. Also you can see is it. Also percentages are indicated or not exact. So I used words on and about. And finally, pay attention to the expressions that I used heated. A low point of about 37%. When graph heats a low point of X%, it means that the graph reaches its lowest number. And this phrase is a great way of indicating what was the graph's minimum and in what year. This is always our first paragraph with specific features, and now we move on to the second paragraph with Finland's specific features. And here is how I wrote it. percent of divorces in Finland was less than 40% in 2011, and it decreased in 2012, when about one sort of marriages in Finland, and it was a divorce as opposed to almost health. In Sweden, however, the secret experienced a steady growth. During the next 2 years, it rose to approximately 39% in 2013, then increased barrels 3% in 2014, and remained steady for the next year. Outracing is the right of Sweden. Just as well as in the paragraph with Sweden's specific features, I organized this paragraph by listing changes that happened to Finland's rate from 2011 to 2015. So in the first sentence, I described Finland's rate in 2011 and 2012, when it was decreasing. Then from 2013, Finland's rate changes in opposite direction. It starts increasing. So I start the next sentence with the word however, and say, however, the secret experienced a steady growth during the next 2 years. In my last sentence, I describe the changes as it happened to feelings rate from 2013 to 2015 in detail. You can see that I use words approximately and around to shows that describe percentages, which cannot be dealt exactly from the graph. Great. It's always our second paragraph with specific features. So we have finished our Band 9 answer. Now you can look and see how. Answer with all paragraphs put together. Thank you very much for watching. And subscribe my YouTube channel, IELTS with Rasel. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. And see you soon in another IELTS surprising tutorial.